Hello, my babes. Welcome back to my channel, the Self-Love Template, where we are leveling up our lives in all of the ways that we know we have needed to for a long time. Or maybe you haven't known for a long time. Maybe you're lucky and you're catching yourself and then able to get into all of this type of content now and change things for your future. That's amazing. I really wish that everybody could catch these types of things early. But for most of us, myself, a lot of these things were not taught to me. A lot of these things didn't become salient until later in life. So here we are. They're things that you wish that you could know when you're a kid. Ideally, somebody should teach you these types of things when you're a child or upon your first inkling of ability to understand what is even being talked about. That's like when it should be done, But most of us, many of us, I guess I should say, many of us are coming to this information way after the fact, and we didn't have people in our lives to model or explain this type of stuff to us. So, in my little corner of the internet, I like to talk about these types of things. Topics that I know will help women, especially, be able to find and maintain a sense of deep intrinsic peace. So let's get into it for today. By the way, I'm drinking my favorite Nixie, the strawberry cream. It's so good. Can't help it. It's just literally my favorite soda ever and just delicious. So today we're going to be talking about self-reliance. I've wanted to cover this topic for a while, and I think I may actually do 2 separate talks on self-reliance for a foundational platform from which that we can have maybe other types of discussions. But there's 2 main ones that I want to address. Number 1 is just kind of like my own perspective on self-reliance as a woman, especially, which is what we're going to be talking about today. And then I do want to go over Emerson's essay, Ralph Waldo Emerson, the writer. I would like to go over his essay on self-reliance because I do think it is a gem amongst writing. And it's another one that I really didn't pay attention to until later in life. I didn't read it until pretty recently, and it kind of shocked me. I believe, too, that I had other opportunities in my life to read it, but I just don't think that you can comprehend or even resonate with or even call into your experience certain things that you're just not ready for. And I think at those earlier times in my life when Emerson was kind of like floating around my orbit, I just don't think I was ready for him. And it wasn't until later in life that I was. And I'm still grateful that I got to read his quintessential piece recently, and I gleaned a lot out of it. And there are some things in there that I would like to talk about. As for today, though, we're going to just cover my kind of perspective on self-reliance, like I said, as a woman specifically. So I want to open it with a challenge, I guess you could say. It's not even like a challenge, but I want to question you with something. I want you to think in your mind, when do you think that it finally became legal for a woman in the United States to have financial independence and perform financial functions without a male cosigner? Don't Google it, just think in your mind, when do you think that was? To be truthful, I've been asking this question to a lot of women over the last couple of weeks that I have learned about this fact, and I'll give you the answer in a few. But truthfully, I've wanted to do a video on self-reliance for a long time because I think it is very important and essential to your self-love practice, your self-love journey. So the answer, oh my God. So the answer, brace yourself. 1974. 1974. Let that sink in. That's not even like a lifetime ago. That is like a half of a lifetime ago. Okay? Also, just a side thought, related, but unrelated. I just reread the Odyssey because I'm going to see it tomorrow, the Christopher Nolan version. And I was like reading a bunch of other stuff based on the Odyssey and Greek mythology and Odysseus as a character. I ended up looking up some information that I wanted to know about Penelope specifically in relation to if she ever found out just some of the things that Odysseus was doing while on his Odyssey. So I stumbled across this amazingly written post by this chick on Reddit, on the Greek mythology subreddit. And I ended up like reading her whole, very long, very well written, very detailed post about how the love between Penelope and Odysseus, while it is painted as this like highly romantic thing, in her opinion and by her calculations, she's just like flabbergasted as to how that could be, because number one, he has all of these different attributes, characteristics, and experiences that kind of show that maybe he wasn't as banner of a partner as the fan world tries to make him out to be. And number two, because there were just certain like customary things at the time of when Homer, well, I mean, not even when Homer was writing the Odyssey, but like when the Odyssey took place, there was certain customary things in terms of dynastic property and successors to certain familial rights and things like that, property, which I've talked about on this channel before. You've heard me like mention things to this nature of like how, you know, women have historically been property. They've been part of a dowry when they're basically exchanged in marriage. So all of that to say that I read a bunch of this stuff about Odysseus and these Greek customs and Penelope and Helen, and it just made me think about women as a whole throughout history and just our subjugation. And I know that it sounds like, okay, here she goes with her misandry or something, but that's not even what I'm saying. I'm just seeking to understand things from my own perspective because I do not consider myself a feminist, really. I mean, I'm all for women and girl power, but I do love men and I love the masculine side of myself. I feel pretty balanced with all of that. But when I learn things about historically how women have been treated, especially like the whole as property thing, or when I'm opening up this video with a fact like that even our mothers basically were not allowed to conduct financial business without a male co-signer. It just really it piques my interest on the one hand. It doesn't necessarily anger me because I just don't feel like I have a right to even be angry, let's say. Like, luckily, my mom was the type of woman who I think was aware of how oppressed women have been. And I don't think she wanted to be. And I think as much as she was exploring traditional roles of maternity and being a wife and all of that kind of stuff, I think she still was also trying to explore how to create avenues for herself to grow as a person, to expand her ability to have more for herself without having to be beholden to my father or reliant on my father. And I think she was always low key trying to teach me that kind of stuff. But number one, she died when I was 17. So that's like a very crucial age to lose a parent, especially a mother. Number two, I think a lot of this stuff she was just figuring out and learning for herself at 48 when she tragically passed away. And number three, I think she lived very much so for my father and in the shadow of my father. And I don't know that she could really contend with whatever his maybe agenda was for us. And I'm not saying he even had one per se, but yeah, I don't know. I just don't know that even really both of my parents were completely developed as people, even by the point that they had me. I think they were still maturing in a lot of ways. And unfortunately, my mom never really got to finish that process of emotional maturity. And I think my father was sort of thrust into it because he also died very young at the age of 61. Was he 61 or was he 62? I think he was 62. He was 62. Either way, that's very young. And what was I going to say? What was the other thing I was going to say about him? Oh, so he got cancer, and I feel like that was what prompted him to take a look at certain things internally and existentially that enabled him to get to a point where he had more emotional maturity than when I was younger, when he was bringing me up, and then especially when he was bringing up my sisters, because they're like pretty much 10 years older than me. And this is not to shit talk on either of my parents. I love my parents immensely, and I feel like they did their absolute very best for us and wanted nothing but the best for us and worked with what they had and created a lot with it. And I admire them. And I know that I am who I am because my parents were who they were. And I honor them and I always will. And I love them. I may have opinions on them, especially now as a grown person, but I love them and honor them. So yeah, I do believe that my mom was low-key trying to impress some of these things on me as a young woman. But again, she never got a chance to figure it all out for herself. And there's things that I'm not going to go into because they're pretty personal. And I just don't know how comfortable either of my sisters would be if I shared some of what I could share for context, but I'll try to like put it in a way that sort of makes sense. So pragmatically, I think my parents were very different. And I do think my father was rather frugal. And I do feel that some of the creature comforts that we had as their children and members of our family were a direct result of my mom's efforts, my mom's doing, my mom's pushing my father to make those things available to us. I think if my father were left to his own devices, we wouldn't have had access to some of these creature comforts. Not to say that he was going to like let us starve or something, but I mean, my dad was the type of man who literally, if you had a cut on your hand or something, he would cut up an old Fruit of the Loom t-shirt and give it to you as a bandage. You know what I mean? Like, this guy was not keeping like band-aids in the house or anything, you know? Um, so I'm just all this to say that I do believe that certain opportunities, creature comforts, experiences, I think a lot of things in my life were the direct result of my mother's influence on my father. And some of those things that my mother made available to us was because financially she had taken some of her own steps to ensure that she would have something outside of what my father controlled financially within the marriage. And this was probably very radical. It was probably very heavy for her to cope with. She definitely did all of this in secret. And, you know, I don't think my father knew any of what was going on financially with my mother until she passed away. But I've been reflecting on this situation a lot more recently in therapy and stuff like that. And just with my own financial station in life changing and things like that. My own vantage point on relationships changing, my vantage point on codependency crystallizing. Like, all of these different things have led me to just kind of look at my experiences with money as a whole, meaning like whether that's from the modeling I received through my caretakers, things I did or did not learn about money from different types of people in my life, experiences that I've gone through with money, and then my whole relationship to money as it has morphed and changed and evolved, devolved at certain points. Just all the different phases of experiences I've had with money, ups, downs, in betweens. There's been all of that. And the one kind of through line is that I've had to learn how to stand on my own 2 feet. I've had to learn how to navigate the whole financial world by myself. And I mean, like, I'm talking like no one was teaching me anything. Anything that I've learned about money is because I've taught it to myself through books and other people who were willing to explain things, and I was willing to understand things. And I think that's the difference, right? Like, you can read all the books in the world, but you have to apply what you've learned at some point, and you have to be willing to apply it. But to begin with, you also have to be willing to learn all of this stuff in the first place. There's plenty of people who don't want to learn, plenty of women who don't want to learn about money. They don't want to learn about finances on any level. They don't want to learn about investing. They don't want to figure out budgeting or sinking funds or any of that stuff, and this process for me was very long. Okay, it was not an overnight thing. It is still very far from where I want it to be. Will it ever be perfect? I don't think so, because old habits die hard. You have to really have the discipline to be on top of yourself. And, things with finances tend to come incrementally. But the cool part is like the more you're consistently applying yourself and doing the behaviors that you need to do to get yourself to where you want to be financially, you look back at the progress you've made, how far you've come, and even attitudinally, how much your mindset has shifted and changed. And you're like, wow, I'm a completely different person. Wow, I have a completely different relationship with money, even with my income. I am at a completely different level with income, things like that. But the one thing is that it starts through here and it starts through here. You can read all the books, but again, if you don't apply anything, if you don't change anything, then meaning like if you don't change in here or in here, then nothing out there is going to change. Like John Wheeler said, there is no out there anyways. That's another conversation for another day. So there's also this Latin phrase that I've been meditating on a lot lately. And I'm not going to say the Latin because I'll butcher it. I'll put it on the screen here, so you can look at the Latin and read it to yourself, because I do feel that there's probably power in those words as a whole, and like even just speaking them, like if you read those words on the screen. But it's basically that action follows embodiment, or action follows being. And this has a lot to do, I think, also with like states of being, which Neville Goddard talks a lot about, right? But basically you have to intrinsically become who you want to be first before you can even do the things that you think this alternate version of yourself would want to do. So like with money, you're not going to become this badass financial manager, steward of money, whatever, until you assume that embodiment inside of you, until you assume that identity inside of you, until you start believing and thinking that you are a financial baddie who has her money shit together or whatever, you know? So the actions come as a result of you deciding inside of yourself that that's who I am now. So once you decide, like, I don't want to be a broke person anymore, I don't want to be a woman who doesn't understand finance, or a woman who has no financial literacy or fiscal hygiene. Once you've decided in yourself, that's who I am now, then you will start taking the actions that back up that new identity. But you're not going to be able to like just do all these things before you have the mindset shift that is a prerequisite to even like doing any of those things, right? So you can start by reading the books and stuff. I think all of that is incredibly important because that's what's going to give you the education to start to understand and have like a mindset shift. But if you haven't decided inside of you, like enough is enough or whatever, then you're not even going to resonate with those books. You're not even going to notice them, probably. Like, you will just walk right by them, or if somebody like recommends something to you, like, you're not going to do it or whatever. Like, read it. You know what I mean? Like, you're just going to be like, oh, yeah, and then like go on with your day. And if you're lucky, kind of like what I was saying with the Emerson thing in the beginning of the video, you loop back around to it and then you've changed. So now you do resonate with it, and then you read it and it really changes you even more and expands you even more, expands your mind and your life even more, because that's the maxim that there's no knowledge that is not power, right? I'm a huge Mortal Kombat fan, and if you are a Mortal Kombat fan too, then you know that Ed Boon at the beginning of all those games, him and Tobias, like, they used to, you know, you load the cartridge into the SNES and turn it on, and literally, like, one of the first screens would say, there is no knowledge that's not power. Even the arcade games had that. There is no knowledge that is not power. And I always loved that. Like, it always stuck with me from when I was like a young kid till now. So, what does all of this have to do with self-reliance? You know, I see a lot of women in varying contexts, varying capacities, who, in one form or another, they're really grappling with a lot of these more traditional mores where women have historically relied upon men to have a roof over their head, to have food in their bellies, to be able to do the things that they want to do or need to do. And I believe Amber Akilla was the one who put it this way when she said that we are, for the first time in history, at a juncture where we don't have to fall asleep and wake up next to some man who we can't stand just to basically have our basic needs met. And at the same time, we want a relationship, right? So just because you want to be an independent woman or a self-reliant woman It doesn't mean that you don't want a relationship, and it doesn't mean that you don't want to be interdependent with someone so that you can gather and combine the resources and forces that you do have in order to be ambitious in life and grow and expand beyond what either of you could potentially do alone, right? Like, there's nothing, no one's saying there's anything wrong with that. But to completely relegate your ability to take care of yourself properly as a grown adult, functioning member of society, to completely relegate that to someone else. And it doesn't matter who you are, male, female, whatever, to just say to yourself, okay, now I don't want to be self-reliant, is completely irresponsible. And not only is it irresponsible, but it's rendering you disempowered. It's not even like rendering you powerless, because you always have the power to change things as they stand, as long as you're willing to. But it's rendering you disempowered because you're giving your power away. You're giving your power to that other person. And I personally would never want to do that. I mean, it's an interesting time to be alive as a woman because we're kind of at the precipice of all of this. Again, going back to my original factoid, 1974 is half of a lifetime ago. And it can feel like, oh yeah, so much has changed. But it hasn't. Number one. Yes, a lot has changed, but like not enough. Okay. And number two, there's a lot of kinks that need to be ironed out, because as much as we want to take on wholeheartedly the role of being a self-reliant, actualized, self-aware, self-loving human being, especially as women, there's still certain aspects of ourselves that, and our femininity especially, that we shouldn't be required to give away in the process of that. And it's going to take a lot of balancing and analysis and feeling into certain things for women to really navigate all of that. I believe in my later lifetime that we will start to see this really happening. But as of right now, we're not really doing anything different than the patriarchy has already done it. And I think that's something that women really need to look at and consider, because I don't think we should be seeking to just blindly emulate what the patriarchy has done, right? We should seek to do something different, not to just proliferate and perpetuate what's already been going on and what's already pretty broken, right? And that's kind of outside of the scope of what I'm trying to talk about in this video, but it's something that we can maybe delve into in later discussions about like femininity and stuff like that. With regards to self-reliance as a whole, when it comes to women and when it comes to finance, it's just wanting to look at how much of your livelihood are you placing on you being in a relationship with someone else. And this could go both ways, right? It could be where you are reliant on someone else financially because you can't do certain things for yourself, or you fail to give yourself space and time to understand certain things for yourself so that you can be able to accomplish certain things for yourself. Or it could be where you are carrying another person and enabling them to be reliant on you, which is just codependency, right? But you don't want to be either of those things. You don't want to be relegating your power to take care of yourself in any capacity. And it doesn't just have to be financial, right? It could be mental, emotional, spiritual, physical, pragmatically, in other ways that don't involve money and just involve your responsibilities in your life. It could be any of these things, right? But you don't want to be giving away your power, and you also don't want to be taking away someone else's power. Because I personally learned in my life that the more you love someone, the more you have to be willing to let them fall on their face and make their own mistakes, because that's learning. That's how people grow. That's how people develop understanding, is when they make mistakes. And it doesn't mean that you shouldn't help people, but it does mean that when you know that you're coming in and swooping in and trying to rescue someone or be their hero or be their reason to live when they can't find it for themselves, or be their reason to take care of themselves and do the things that they need to do for themselves, like, you are literally robbing them of the experience to process all of that for themselves and go through valuable experiences that are going to allow them to grow and change as people and essentially have a better life down the road. When people have to make big decisions or do really big things, like, these are things that, yeah, you can maybe seek counsel, but like ultimately it has to be like your inner counsel, and to try to take that away from someone is just a form of control. And if you really, really love someone, then you love them for the totality of who they are, and you're going to want to let them go through that experience on their own so that they can build the self-efficacy, the self-esteem, and the self-reliance, ultimately, self-respect, all of these things, the self-love that are going to come from them doing these esteemable acts, because that's how self-esteem is built, is by doing hard things. Like I was talking about in one of my more recent videos, it's like so much of life is just doing hard things. So you want to let people do the hard things that they need to do for themselves, and you want to develop the muscle to do the hard things for yourself that you need to do to have the sense of self-worth and self-value, self-validation, because that's just going to enrich all of your other relationships, like we've talked about in the past. That's the wellspring from which this wealth of different types of relationships and experiences is going to stem from. It doesn't just have to be like relationships in a social sense or a familial sense. It can be like at work and stuff too, or just with strangers. It's really just developing the core of who you are, your essence, your nature, your attributes, because you're unique and you bring something to the world that is necessary. And there's only, like I've said so many times, there's one of you. There's only one Victoria. There's only one of you watching this video. Like, and you only get one chance to be whoever you are right now. So you have to know that the odds of you being born as you, whoever you are so minuscule. So that's a big deal. You just even being alive, being here. So honing whatever perspective it is that you're going to bring from your unique, subjective experiences and your opinions and stuff like that, your vantage points, they're so necessary because you just don't know how they're going to affect people who you love, who are really close to you, people who are in your inner cipher, people who you come in contact with in your day-to-day life, and even the greater world as a whole, like the collective consciousness or whatever you want to call it. So, yeah, don't want to get like too far away from the self-reliance thing, but I opened it with the idea that yes, women financially, we're navigating very new terrain, and we are really pioneers, women now who have financial literacy and who are making it less of a big deal, in the sense of like, this is commonplace, right? We want it to be just as common for women to know what they're talking about and what they're doing when it comes to money as it is for a man to do those things, right? That it's just as common for a woman to keep her financial house in order as it is for a man to keep his financial house in order. And that just is people in general, that we are financially literate and have good fiscal hygiene. Because, like I said in my more recent video too, like, all of life is relational, and you definitely have a relationship with money. And even in the verbiage of money, right? Currency. Think of a current, it flows. Whether you're talking water, electricity, there has to be movement. And so there's definitely a flow between you and money that you don't want to stagnate that. You want to allow it to come and go, because it's, again, what's going to enable you to exercise your value system, and your values are what enable you to build your life the way you want it, and to keep boundaries intact to protect yourself from the things that you would otherwise not want. I mean, these are like really important things. So we're at a precipice where it is really increasingly important to understand why, even if we decide to be in a relationship, we don't give up our sense of self-reliance. Because two things are true. You come into this world alone, and you will exit it alone. And another thing I would add to that is that you're the one who lays your head to the pillow with yourself every night. You're the one inside of here and behind these. It's you. It's you and you, baby. It's you and you. So you owe it to you. And again, you honing that part of yourself is what's going to make you an even more excellent partner. So that when you are combining resources with someone pragmatically, then you're going to be the most resourceful version of yourself. Meaning, like, whatever's there, you're going to take it and make the most of it and make it flourish and make it amazing for you and your partner, or if you have children, or if you have other family members that have to come into the mix, or whatever. Just whoever you're loving, you're going to be able to pragmatically show up for them better, because you've done that for yourself first. So maybe women historically have been treated like property. Maybe we have been diminished in the sense of what we're capable of and things like that. But we're at a juncture in time where we have more rights than we've ever had. And I think we owe it to the many, many, many women and men who died to give us the rights that we have today. We owe it to them to just become better versions of ourselves in the sense of self-reliance. We owe it to them to become better financial versions of ourselves, better self-loving versions of ourselves, better physical versions of ourselves, mental, emotional, spiritual versions of ourselves. All of these components that comprise us as the unique, beautiful human beings that we are. Let's put that forward. Let's love ourselves more and let's take care of ourselves better. And that's going to require us to become better financial stewards, better financial managers, better keepers of our own financial houses. So I think that's pretty much the gist of what I want to say for now with regards to this. Like I said, I do want to do one more video where we just kind of talk about Emerson's essay a little bit and some quotes that I'd like to highlight from his essay on self-reliance. And I think there's a lot of gold in that. So if you haven't read it, maybe between now and when we talk about it, you can take some time and read it. It's pretty short. It's an easy read. I think you can even get it on like Audible and stuff. So I highly suggest it. I highly recommend it. And I can't wait to talk about it with you guys. Just really thankful to be here in this space and be able to talk about all these different things with you. So thank you for being here. Thank you for the chance for me to be here. I'm sending you guys all my love as per usual. And make sure to like, comment, subscribe if you haven't already. Share a video with a pal who you think would resonate with my content. I can't wait, like I said, to see you in the next one. And just remember how special, unique, and beautiful you are, and how much love you deserve starting from within, and just how possible it is for you to develop strength in whatever areas that you think right now maybe it feels hard or something like that, like you can't. Not only do you deserve that strength, not only will you create that strength, but I am here with you, developing my own strengths, building up my own deficiencies to a point where they're bolsterable and able to kind of stand alone. So I'm right here with you. You're not alone. And you can totally do this. Okay? So I will talk to you beauties soon. I love you all so much, my babes. And I will see you in the next one. Bye.